It's a evening before a big holiday here, as you must know.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's no, it's Sunday, July the 4th. We have 2 more days. But people sometimes go away.
Long weekend.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Swamiji.
Good evening, Swamiji.
Good evening, good evening.
Pranam, Swamiji.
Yes, Anakji, pranam.
Yeah, we'll
Pranam
see,
Maharaj.
we'll
Yes, Mr. Mukherjee, pranam, good morning to you.
we'll see you in 2 weeks, Maharaj.
How
I'm coming to Sacramento for a half a day.
are you?
Yes, I'll write you the details.
Oh, great. We'll be happy to meet you.
Yeah.
But you are coming in this scorching summer.
Our son is there in Ukiah, so we are going to see him.
Where does he live?
Ukiah, it's about 2 hours from
Oh,
Sacramento.
Eureka?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Up in the north.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So are you getting a background noise from my microphone?
No.
Okay, good.
I'm not getting.
All right. All right.
Evening, Swamiji.
Good evening, Noel. Good evening.
Pranam Maharaj.
Yes, Lalita ji, pranam. Good morning to you. Yes.
Namaskar, Swamiji.
Manish Babu, namaskar.
Good evening, Swamiji.
Good evening.
Good evening, Swamiji.
Yes, good evening. All right, so time to start. We shall chant the second stanza of Shiva Manasa Puja, mental worship of Shiva. We are learning to chant that, and it has got 5 stanzas. 4 of them are alike, the 5th one is different. So first one we saw last time. This time we shall try to learn to chant the second stanza. All right, so okay, the second stanza of Shiva Manasa Puja, mental worship of Lord Shiva. We shall read the translation together. Sweet rice in a golden bowl, inlaid with 9 jewels, the 5 kinds of food made from milk, curd, bananas, and vegetables. Sweet water scented with camphor and betel leaf. I have prepared all these in my mind with devotion. O Lord, please accept them. So this is going on mental worship. A devotee is offering choicest things to God, but all mentally. So first we shall, it will be a call and response. I shall chant and then you will repeat with me. Shaubarne navarat न खंड रचिते सौवर्णे नवरत्न खंड रचिते पात्रे घृतं पायसम् पात्रे घृतं पायसम् भक्ष्यं पञ्चविधं पयो भक्ष्यं पञ्चविधं पयो दधियुतं दधियुतं रम्भाफलं पानकम् रम्भाफलं पानकम् शाकानाम् अयुतं जलम् शाकानाम् अयुतं जलम् रुचिकरं रुचिकरं कर्पूरखण्डोज्ज्वलम् कर्पूरखण्डोज्ज्वलम् ताम्बूलं मनसा मया ताम्बूलं मनसा मया विरचितं विरचितं भक्त्या प्रभो स्वीकुरु भक्त्या प्रभो स्वीकुरु. Now we shall chant it together, that is chant along. Chant along, first slowly, then in a little faster. Sovarne navaratna khanda rachite patre घृतं पायसम् भक्ष्यं पञ्चविधं पयो दधियुतं रम्भाफलं पानकम् शाकानाम् अयुतं जलं रुचिकरं कर्पूरखण्डोज्ज्वलम् ताम्बूलं मनसा मया विरचितं भक्त्या प्रभो स्वीकुरु ताम्बूलं मनसा मया विरचितं भक्त्या प्रभो स्वीकुरु. Now faster. सौवर्णे नवरत्न खण्ड रचिते पात्रे घृतं पायसम् भक्ष्यं पञ्चविधं पयो दधियुतं रम्भाफलं पानकम् शाकानाम् अयुतं जलं रुचिकरं कर्पूरखण्डोज्ज्वलम् ताम्बूलं मनसा मया विरचितं भक्त्या प्रभो स्वीकुरु ताम्बूलं मनसा मया विरचितं भक्त्या प्रभो स्वीकुरु. All right, so we are now reviewing what we have studied so far in Narada Bhakti Sutra. Narada's Way of Divine Love, a text on devotion, which is written in the form of aphorisms. Aphorisms are short, condensed statements, easy to memorize. So last day we saw from aphorism 1 to 6, which we studied earlier in details. We just had a review. We saw that it introduced the subject called Bhakti, then tried to define Bhakti, which in fact cannot be defined, which can only be experienced. Still, to give an idea of what Bhakti is, Narada tried to show us or point to what Bhakti is through different characteristics, and we found that one in whom this devotion, this ecstatic love for God has already dawned, they show 11 characteristics which were pointed out in aphorisms 5, 6, 4, 5 and 6. Today we shall see aphorisms 7 to 14. 7 to 14. So aphorisms 7 to 14 deal with a few other characteristics of Parabhakti. Parabhakti means supreme devotion, when the love for God is already in our heart. It is spontaneous. When we have reached the state when love for God is already spontaneous in our heart, that is, we are consumed by that divine love. 7 to 40 deal with a few aspects of Parabhakti, namely, Parabhakti is desirelessness. That is, it consumes all other desires. It is antidote for all other desires. It is one-pointedness in our devotion to God. Then it is consecration of all activities to God, surrendering all activities to God. That is, in short, living a God-centered life. And last 2-3 aphorisms deal with that what is the need for following the holy books and other social conventions, even though one has already achieved everything in the path of devotion. Aphorism 7 says that bhakti is not driven by desire because its nature is cessation. If you remember, we saw that in aphorism 2 we noted one point, that devotion, divine love, is qualitatively different from common love. Qualitatively, not only quantitatively but also qualitatively. Why? So one and we noted there that we shall see in future how it is different, not only in degree but also in kind from other kind of love we know about. So here is given one such characteristic, that it is not driven by desire. In ordinary love, there is always some expectation and desire involved, even if subtle. Even if subtle in our relationship, loving relationship, mutual love, there is always an implied, subtle expectation involved. But Parabhakti, there is no such desire. It is an end in itself. So one may love God, try to love God for other end, like desire to go beyond suffering, desire to achieve something, or desire to know the answers of big questions. But when Parabhakti has dawned, one does not have any such desires to fulfill. Its nature is cessation. When real bhakti dawns in our heart, we don't want anything else. And it is not suppression or repression of desires, but the desires drop off automatically. Sri Ramakrishna's example, let us remember, when the coconut ripens, it automatically drops off. Similarly, when this divine love dawns in our heart, other desires on their own fall off. So this may make us think that loving God for any other end is not okay. So we should remember, loving God for any other end is not bad, but loving God for love's sake, for love alone, is the best. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse number 16, Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, 4 types of people, all of them are virtuous people. They come to me. The afflicted, those who want to go beyond suffering. Then the seeker of wealth, or seeker of accomplishment. Then seeker of knowledge, and finally the person of knowledge. But remember, all of them are virtuous people. But it is best to love God for love's sake. That is what Parabhakti is. Since all of us have to go through these 4 levels, we need not feel bad if our love for God is not of the highest type. The type here that is being mentioned in Narada Bhakti Sutra. So the sutra was Sana Kamayamana Nirodho Rupatvat. It is not driven by desire, but because it is of the nature of cessation, nirodha. Nirodha means cessation. So next aphorism will clarify what cessation of desire, that is nirodha, is. So from 7 to 14, the aphorisms are such that each clarifies or the previous. One term of the former aphorism is explained or illumined in the next aphorism. Aphorism 7 use the word nirodha, which really means cessation. So what nirodha means in the context of bhakti, that we shall see in aphorism number 8. Aphorism number 8 says, cessation means consecration of all activities, mundane or religious. Usual meaning of nirodha is cessation, such as in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, where Patanjali says, Yoga Chittavritti Nirodhaha. What is yoga? Cessation of mental thought waves. So that is the usual meaning of nirodha. But in this aphorism, aphorism 8, the Sanskrit aphorism is nirodha tu loko veda vyaparo nyasaha. Here one word is used, tu. Tu means but. So tu but is used to draw our attention to the fact that Nirodha has a special contextual meaning here. What is Nirodha? Nirodha is Nyasaha, Loka Veda Vyapara Nyasaha. This is the meaning of Nirodha. Nirodha is Nyasaha. Then what is Nyasaha? So two meanings of Nyasaha. One is giving up, from which has the word come Sannyasaha, everything given up, giving up everything. Another meaning of Nyasaha is consecration, dedication, surrendering everything to God, as we find in worship services, puja, karo nyasaha, angan nyasaha, all angan nyasaha, all these nyasaha in that context means consecration, that is placing divine in those respective places. So two meanings, one is giving up, another is consecration. Now, giving up of all activities is not possible at all. How even one who is a great devotee, how they can give up all activities? It is not possible. So the first meaning of nyasa does not apply here. But giving up might mean giving up selfishness, giving up selfish desire. And that's why the second meaning of nyasa is implied here. Nyasaha means consecration, consecration of all activities. That is Veda Vyapara. Loko Veda Vyapara. Loko Vyapara means mundane activities, day-to-day activities like physical activities such as eating, walking, mental activities such as thinking, reading, social activities like interaction with other people, interpersonal relationship, all of this should be centered in God. Religious activities, Veda Vyapara, that is dharma, ethical, religious duties, spiritual pursuits, spiritual practices, all of this should be surrendered to God. All of them should be centered around God. Consecration of all activities mean offering of all activities to God. Bhagavad Gita we find chapter 9 verse 27. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer them as sacrifice. Whatever you give, whatever you austerities you do, all that you offer to me. And also Shiva Manasa Puja, the chanting, the hymn that we are now learning to chant, the fourth stanza of Shiva Manasa Puja says, whatever work I do, all that is your worship, O Lord. That is the meaning of Nyasaha. That is what meant by the previous aphorism Nirodha. Interestingly, initiated devotees might have noticed that this thing, that we are instructed that after every daily sadhana, after every sitting, whatever our regular sadhana is, spiritual practice it, at the end of the practice, we are instructed to offer even our spiritual practices to our Ishtadevata. This has got a profound implication. That is, it is to remind us, to teach us that we should be doing all our activities with the spirit of surrender to God. Because the daily sadhana, what we do in the morning or evening, what we are supposed to do is nothing but condensed form of our entire spiritual life. So at the end of every session, we are instructed to offer the fruits of our sadhana to our Ishtadevata or Ishtadevi, whosoever. That is to teach us this consecration. This dedication of all activities to God makes every act sacred. This consecration nyasha is natural to one who has had this supreme devotion, para bhakti, and for others, for us, for seekers, it is a practice. So to sum up, cessation of desires, nirodha, means consecration of all actions to God. The next aphorism, aphorism 9, states two more characteristics of Parabhakti. We have seen a few earlier, two more characteristics of Parabhakti. Aphorism 9 says, Parabhakti is one-pointedness in devotion and indifference to things opposed to that devotion. So, two things. One is one-pointedness in devotion. Second, indifference to things which are opposed to devotion. So one-pointedness, as we noted, may mean three things. One is first, integration. Integration of all our energy, motives, emotions, will toward God. We saw that Sri Ramakrishna's famous instruction, direct the six passions to God. Feel greedy for God. If you must have the feeling of I and mine, that is ego, the ego that we have, then associate it with God. And if you must have pride, then feel like Bibhisana, who said, I have touched the feet of Rama with my head. I will not bow this head before anyone else. This way, connecting all emotions, all feelings, all our mental faculties, energy with God. Second meaning of one-pointedness could be making God or spiritual life a priority. At our present state, we have several priorities. But for a true bhakta, the primary priority is God. That is prioritizing God or spiritual life over other things, that is called one-pointedness. Third meaning of one-pointedness might mean God is the purpose of life. God is the value of all values. God is the ideal of all ideals. Everything else will take a back seat. Everything else will lose their values. It is like, as we gave an example, it was like driving in a high-speed lane, high occupancy lane, which is a narrow lane. When we are driving to such a lane in high speed, everything else is tuned out. We are one-pointed only in maintaining our lane. Similarly, for a Parabhakta, their whole attention is on God alone. In short, living a God-centered life. That is what one-pointedness means. Then the second characteristic of this aphorism was indifference to things opposed to that. That is indifference to perishable, transient things. And indifference is not ignoring family, friends, and others, but seeing God in them. Indifference is not ignoring the duties, it is doing all the works, all the duties as a service to God. So whatever such a devotee do, whatever they think, whosoever they are related to, all these are centered in God. Sri Ramakrishna says, if you have toothache, whatever you might be doing, the toothache is always at the back of your mind. So this is what indifference to other things mean. One-pointedness in God and indifference to things other than God. So summary of the aphorism 9 is, intense love for God makes one mind one-pointed to God and indifferent to other things. God becomes primary, everything else is secondary. As I said, these aphorisms are one explaining the other, one elucidating the other. So 10th, aphorism 10 expands or explains further this concept of one-pointedness. Aphorism 10 is, one-pointedness means giving up all other supports. So another way of looking at the concept of one-pointedness. One-pointedness means giving up all other supports. Anna ashrayanam tyaga ananyata. What does it mean, giving up all other supports? So in our present state, we have many support systems which are needed. We have financial support, family support, support of friends, support of community, state, country. They are of great help, not only when we are in crisis, but also for our regular well-being. But giving up all other supports means, it does not mean rejecting the support of friends, family and others, but it means only increasing recognition of the fact that all other supports, very helpful though, are fragile. Fragile. They may remain, they may not. Secondly, all other supports that we might have are, in fact, none but God's support alone. So other supports are also perceived as divine grace. Acharya Ramanuja says that since we are part of the whole called God, dependence on God is only natural. So a devotee, a parabhakta, a true devotee, one who has had this kind of highest love, natural spontaneous love for God, they have total dependence on God for everything. What happens to such a devotee? A tremendous strength comes from such total dependence on God. Tremendous strength, energy, vitality, all these come, enthusiasm come from such total dependence on God. One knows that a huge support system called God is always at their back. God has our back always. So, and that is what we see in the life of great devotees. I gave an example of Swami Ranganathanandaji, how he dared to come walk barefoot from Rangoon to Calcutta. And not only that, serving others. We can also take the examples of Swami Vivekananda. At that time, when he did not know anything about America, did not know any person, did not know where to go, where to stay, but just came in here, just came to America to join this Parliament of Religion. And we see in his letters, every now and then he is acknowledging the fact that it is only depending on God, with dependence on God alone, that he could come here and he could succeed in whatever he was doing. So one-pointed devotion implies total dependence on God for everything. Aphorism 9 also said indifference to everything else. This is being explained further in aphorism 11. What does indifference to everything else means? Aphorism 11. Indifference means performing those mundane and religious activities which are conducive for devotion, and abstaining from those which are opposed to that devotion. Loka vedeshu tat anukulo acharanam tat virodhishu udasinata. Tat virodhishu udasinata cha. So, first of all, let us remember that this aphorism is about whom? About the enlightened bhaktas who have already reached their goal. They already have one-pointed devotion to God. For them, every activity is already related to God. For them, no activity is against devotion. Then why this aphorism? The answer is, although all activities could be performed as worship, some activities are more conducive than others. For example, there are some spiritual practices like prayer, meditation, which are more conducive than other elaborate rituals which require lot of effort, time and energy. There are mundane things like maintaining good health, good relationship, etc. are more conducive for devotion than being engaged in, say, a futile discussions. So each one of us has to choose for ourselves which of the available activities are conducive for devotion. We have to prioritize in that way. And according to this aphorism, the criterion for choosing or prioritizing our activities are two. Number one, activities which are conducive for devotion. Number two, activities which are at least not against devotion. Activities which at least don't hinder devotion. Enlightened ones who have para bhakti will naturally do so. They will naturally prioritize those type of activities which are conducive for devotional life. For us seekers, we have to practice this. We have to think, analyze that what should we prioritize. Are we getting engaged in things which are futile and rather which are opposed to devotional life, or what we are doing are absolutely necessary? Accordingly, we have to decide. This is the meaning of aphorism 11. Then we shall see aphorism 12 and 13 together. Aphorism 12 and 13 says, let there be care for the scriptures even after being firmly established in the truth. So a question comes, how long one should follow holy books and their instructions? So these two aphorisms together say that let there be care for the scriptures even after being firmly established in the truth. Otherwise, there is the risk of a fall. So two interpretations of the above aphorisms are needed. One is for the seekers, and number two for those who have already reached Parabhakti. First, let us see what these two aphorisms mean from the perspective of seekers. For the seekers, a seeker should try to adhere to the scriptural injunctions until they are established in Parabhakti. Which scriptural injunctions? Those which are conducive for devotion. Examples such as Bhagavad Gita, characteristics of a true devotee, chapter 12, verse 13 to 19. Those are the those are the values a devotee should practice. Or say Yama Niyama, the do's and don'ts that we find in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And also there will be some practices which will be recommended by Narada in the later part of this book. These are conducive for devotion, so a seeker should adhere to them until they have reached the goal. Otherwise, there is the risk of a fall. If the seekers discard scriptures, dharma will decline, and scriptures uphold dharma, and dharma in turn support or hold the seekers. However, we should remember that we are not being threatened here to follow dharma. Point is, if we want to reach the goal, what is the goal? Parabhakti, inner freedom, then we should follow the scriptural injunctions, we should follow dharma. It is like a road map. Until we have reached the destination, the road map is needed. And number two, interpretation of these two aphorisms from the perspective of the illumined ones, those who have already reached the destination. What need is for them to follow the road map? They have already reached the destination. There are several reasons. One is the truths of the scriptures must be relived before our own eyes. Bhagavad Gita says, chapter 3, verse 21, whatever a great person does, others do that very thing. So when we see such great devotees adhering to these practices, these recommendations, these do's, then we also try to follow them. Their examples encourage us to follow those values. We also feel that it is possible to follow those virtues, even though they do not need them anymore. They follow those values and those scriptural injunctions for the sake of others, because if they don't follow, others might imitate them and others also won't follow them, which will be harmful for others. That is why even a illumined bhakta also should follow the scriptures. So aphorism 12 and 13 together mean that for a seeker, until they have reached the goal, they should try to follow the scriptural injunctions for their own good. And for an illumined one, it is for the sake of others that they should follow the scriptural injunctions. One thing I remember that in Bhuteshanandaji's book, this aphorism 12 has been translated that in a way that until one has reached bhakti, para bhakti, one should follow scriptural injunction. But as I said, both the translations are possible, that even after reaching the destination, one should follow scriptures. That translation is also valid, and that is what we followed here, because in this context, in keeping with other aphorisms that make more sense. Then aphorism 14. So we saw Veda Vyapara, that is religious activities, how long they should be followed. Should be followed until we have reached. After we have reached also, for the sake of others, we will naturally follow them, because at that time, by that time, they are natural to us. They are natural to us. They have become our habit. What about worldly activities? Should we stop? How long we should do that? That is aphorism 14. Aphorism 14. Lokopi tavat eva bhajanadi vyaparasu vyaparaha tu asharira dharana avadhi. Worldly activities also that much only as is essential. But activities such as eating should be continued as long as the body lasts. The aphorism says worldly activities also that much only as is essential. And activities such as eating should be continued as long as the body lasts. So there are two components of this aphorism. First is worldly activities also that much only. For an illumined person, it means as much as it is absolutely necessary. A bhakta, after having this para bhakti in their heart, try to remain in that devotion only. Don't want to get engaged in unnecessary things. As Sri Ramakrishna says, that when that bhakti dawns in one's heart, one's involvement naturally drops off. One's involvement in the worldly affairs activities automatically drops off. And for a seeker, after having a desired quality of life, a good enough life, one should not pursue too much or put too much energy and time in that direction to improve the quality of life. Rather, they should spend more efforts and energy in pursuing devotional practices. If we spend our efforts, time, energy in pursuing non-essential worldly activities, we won't be able to devote quality time for our spiritual practices. That is the meaning of tavat eva. that much only. That much only. How much? For us, as it is necessary to a desired quality of life. After that, our concern should be more into our spiritual development and devotional practices. The second aspect or second important part of this aphorism was eating etc. should be continued till the body lasts. So eating etc. means other vital activities. So it also again has to be read from two perspectives. From the first, for the illumined, even an illumined person should continue to eat for the maintenance of the body. Why? Because the body after illumination appears a temple of God, which is a fact, but at that time it becomes a reality. This body is temple of God, where God resides, so it should be maintained with care. An illumined person may continue to and should maintain their health reasonably so that they may continue to adore God, keep on doing divine communion, and secondly, serve the God in others. For that reason, they should maintain their health. We see in the life of Sri Ramakrishna that towards the end, when he had cancer and having trouble, others told him to pray to Divine Mother Kali so that this cancer is cured. Sri Ramakrishna was reluctant to do that. But we find in Gospel, at one place he mentions that I told mother that make me fit only to that extent that I can share the divine bliss with the devotees. That much health, if you feel, you may please let me regain that much health so that I can share the divine bliss with the devotees. And for a seeker, it means for a seeker, health is important because with a healthy body and mind, we are in a better position to practice devotion. And how should a devotee take care of their health? We saw that that also comes from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse number 17. And what is that essence of that verse? Moderation. Moderation is the key. Moderation is key for health. It's not overeating or undereating, not oversleeping or undersleeping, not overdoing, not remaining totally lazy. Overeating makes us lazy, undereating makes us weak, oversleeping makes us drowsy, undersleeping makes us fatigued, overworking, overdoing causes exhaustion, too little work makes us lazy. So, with regard to worldly activities, devotees engage only in that much what is essential. With regard to vital activities such as eating, one should carefully continue them as long as the body lasts. So summary of aphorism 7 to 14 in bullet points are like this. Parabhakti is not driven by desires. It is rather antidote of all desires or antidote for all desires. I don't know, antidote of or antidote for. And it is rather antidote of all desires. With the dawn of such ecstatic love, bhakti, all activities are centered in God. Such a devotee has one-pointed devotion to God. Other things become secondary to such a devotee. For everything, for every crisis, they are dependent on God alone. Although they don't need to follow religious and social conventions, they do so for setting examples for others. In worldly affairs, they engage themselves only that much what is absolutely necessary, and they maintain their health as long as the body lasts, so that they can love and serve God. That is, these are the main points of aphorism 7 to 14. Next we shall see 15 to 24. That will be the last review, where Narada will take up three characteristics or three expressions of divine love. Tat lakshanani. What are the outward manifestation of that ecstatic love? After stating three existing viewpoints, Narada will present his viewpoint and also give us examples to show that it is possible to have such kind of love. That we shall see next day. All right. Any question? So in the ultimate goal, that para bhakti will result in us getting the same sense of love to all, even in our regular relationship. Yes, that all our regular relationship will be through God alone. Okay, God will be the basis of our relationship. Mute. Okay, I have unmuted you, so if you want to have any specific question, you may unmute yourself.
Swamiji, I have one question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm thinking about the aphorism number 14, which emphasizes natural activities such as physical exercise should be continued and so on. I mean, at least as per the translation. On the other hand, when I read the gospel, is various places, there are references to hatha yoga as something that is not good, or Vedantis do not accept hatha yoga. Sri Ramakrishna has said few times, as recorded by M. I'm just trying to reconcile, the view,
Right.
From the point of view of physical exercise.
Yes.
If my question makes sense.
Yes. So Sri Ramakrishna what wanted to say is that some people get too much involved into hatha yoga itself. You got it? So hatha yoga becomes the end of life. That is what Sri Ramakrishna did not like. The hatha yoga's purpose, if we look at the history of hatha yoga, how it came. Hatha yoga came as an aside, as an auxiliary to Raja Yoga. Patanjali's, this 8-limb Ashtanga Yoga, there comes asana, posture. That posture, if posture is perfect, then our breathing is calm and quiet, rhythmic, With a good posture, we have good rhythm, good breathing. With a good breathing, mind is calm. With that mind, we can meditate better. So that is in the entire picture, that is the role of asana. Then asana became independent a thing. Lot of things went on in asana, nothing wrong in that. Sri Ramakrishna's point was that one should not be totally so much involved in Hatha Yoga itself that this itself becomes an end. It is all right, those who want have only their goal is to have a flexible body, good health, good. For them, Sri Ramakrishna is not saying this. Sri Ramakrishna is saying this to those who want to be devotee, don't want to have this divine bliss. For them, to there is a chance of getting sidetracked by Hatha Yoga. So the point is moderation. We see very much that some people get so much enthusiastic about their health that they start overdoing. We call them fitness buff. Fitness buff. So that is all right. You want fitness, fine, you are justified. There is nothing are we to criticize about that. But when it comes to spiritual practice, for a devotee who wants to develop that kind of love, so too much involvement, energy, time spent only in Hatha Yoga is definitely detrimental for the main spiritual practices. This is how we should reconcile them.
I got it. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, one question was, is ritualistic worship is linked with apara bhakti? In that case, is this gradual logical way to reach para bhakti? Don't most people practice a mix of both? Please explain. If you remember aphorism 15 or 16 or 17, one of the characteristics of para bhakti was love in worship. So ritualistic worship alone, we cannot say that it is apara bhakti. To a great devotee also, the divine love can express itself love for ritualistic worship. Okay, and ritualistic worship is definitely a time-tested path to grow in devotion. Okay, but not the only path. Not the only path, and better we should employ as many paths as possible, which we shall see later on. And don't most people practice a mix of both? So this question is not valid. Para bhakti and apara bhakti cannot remain together. Para bhakti means itself that you have reached the goal. Apara bhakti means the means to reach the goal. Okay, so para bhakti and apara bhakti are not two types of bhakti. Okay, it's thought that you have partial para bhakti, partial apara bhakti. Para bhakti is your spontaneous love for God. Apara bhakti means all the spiritual practices you are doing to grow in divine love or to increase your love. Okay, so suppose I am doing prayer, okay, only to trying to connect with God, that is apara bhakti. Okay, God, and when I am so connected that prayer has become natural to me, God has become real to me, that is para bhakti. Okay, and now we are in the section of para bhakti alone. That is why we are seeing everything at the superlative level. Having attained which, one does not want anything else. Okay, having attained which, one does not feel like doing or taking up any selfish project. Okay, so these are all for them who have already had that kind of highest spontaneous love. Okay, we are not yet to the stage here where it is prescriptive bhakti, for which is for all of us, most of us here. Okay. How to become perfect in preparatory bhakti before proceeding to supreme devotion. How to become perfect in preparatory bhakti is by doing them. By doing them. So, to be frank, and we should accept the fact, this para bhakti, the kind of bhakti we are reading now, happens to 1 in a million. Happens to 1 in a million. But as I said, this is the tradition of Vedantic tradition. They always start the journey describing the highest. The goal they first will reach. They will place the goal at the very beginning. Then they will speak about the means, other path. Everywhere if we see Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, if you look at say Bhagavad Gita, very beginning, second chapter, first 10 verses, everything has been told. Then coming down, stepping down from that highest thing, other chapters. First, Sri Krishna, when he opens his mouth, first 10 verses, every answers has been told. Atma and Atma Sarupa. And rest are just clarification and other viewpoints and means. Okay. So this is this is the structure of the scriptural texts of Indic tradition. The highest thing at the very beginning, which is really daunting for us. Daunting. Can we really do this? But we have to hold on to see to that portion when it comes to our level. Okay. That what we should do. All right. So see you next week. And now before meditation, 1 minute of break, okay, for drinking water.